Hello and welcome to this exploring session, and today we are looking at this sort of middle section of the Misfortunes of Arthur. We're going from Act 2, Scene 3 to the end of Act 3, primarily written by Thomas Hughes with occasional intercessions by actors who didn't like his lines. That might be an unfair accusation. We have got through Act 1, which was all... I think the star was definitely Mordred, who definitely got some wonderful arguing going in. And Act 2 has started very much on full pelt. Arthur is on his way. Arthur is on his way, and terrible things might be occurring because Mordred, his son, may or may not have been involved with Guinevere, or Guinevere as the play puts it. And they're both sort of quite worried about what Arthur's going to say. Arthur's been away for 9 years. He's been away for 9 years. I really don't expect that he has any real... the expectation that he's going to have to make sure he's got his power back. He's going to have to reset all the relations with his extended family. I don't think he has any reason really to have expected anything different. But let's see what the play says. To continue our journey through the play, we have in the room reading Gilla, chorus number 1, Cador, and Aschillius is...
I'm Eric. I was just moving around because, I was adjusting my darkness.
It's always important to get your darkness properly adjusted. Contrast levels. Very important there. Reading Herald in Act 2, Dux Pictorum, Conan, Not the Barbarian, chorus number 2, and Arthur is...
Liza Graham, my darkness is not well adjusted at all in London.
Reading initially Mordred, chorus 3, and possibly other parts later on is...
That's me, Rachael, actor in New Jersey.
Joining us at the moment, officially down to read Howell, but may also be reading additional parts to be assigned any second now, is...
Hi, I'm David, researcher and writer on British art, based in London.
Reading, I'm going to say this horribly wrong again, Cheldrichus, chorus number 4, and Soldiers is...
Hi, I'm Katrina, and I'm up in Scotland.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. We may have additional readers appearing any second now, or we may not. We shall see what happens. But otherwise, we're going to rejoin Act 2 and say we're rejoining very much in the middle of a scene. It's called Act 2, Scene 3, but it's one of these scenes that sort of just steps into the middle of a scene that's already in progress when somebody new enters the stage. So we are in the middle of a conflab between Mordred, who's Rachael today, who's really keen on fighting on against Arthur. Arthur has returned, there's been a massive battle, and Mordred has lost. But he's come off going, nope, right, round two, let's get it on. And Conan, his advisor, friend, bestie, just says, no, maybe we should not do that. Maybe that'll be bad. And as they debate this point, a herald comes running on. And so I will ask David to read Gawin in the ensuing scene. Herald joins the stage where Mordred is currently already on.
Your sire, O prince, considering what distress the realm sustains by both your mutual wars, hath sent your brother Gawin, Alban king, to treat of truce and to imparl of peace.
Speak, brother. What commandment sends our sire? What message do you bring? My life or death?
A message far unmeet, most needful though. The sire commands not where the son rebels. His love descends too deep to wish your death.
And mine ascends too high to wish his life.
Yet thus he offereth, though your faults be great and most disloyal to his deep abuse. Yet yield yourself, he'll be as prone to grace as you to ruth, an uncle, sire, and liege. and fitter were your due of submission done than wrongful wars to reave his right and realm.
It is my fault that he doth want his right. It is his own to vex the realm with wars.
It is his right that he attempts to seek. It is your wrong that driveth him thereto.
'Tis his insatiate mind that is not so content, which hath so many kingdoms more besides.
The more you ought to tremble at his power.
The greater is my conquest if I win.
The more your foil if you should hap to lose, for Arthur's fame and valour such as you should rather imitate, or at the least envy, if hope of better fancies failed. For whereas envy reigns, though it repines, yet doth it fear a greater than itself.
He that envies the valour of his foe detects a want of valour in himself. He fondly fights that fights with such a foe were 'twere a shame to lose. No praise to win, but with a famous foe succeed what will. To win is great renown, to lose less foil. His conquests, were they more, dismay me not. The oftener they have been, the more they threat. No danger can be thought both safe and oft, and who hath oftener waged wars than he? Escapes secure him not, he owes the price. Whom chance hath often missed, chance hits at length. Or if that chance have furthered his success, so may she mine, for chance hath made me king.
As chance hath made you king, so chance may change. Provide for peace. That's it the highest peers, no state except even conquerors ought to seek. Remember Arthur's strength, his conquest late, his fiery mind, his high aspiring heart. Mark then the odds. He expert, you untried, he ripe, you green. Yield you, whiles yet you may, he will not yield. He wins his peace with wars.
If chance may change, his chance was last to win. The likelier now to lose, his haughty heart and mind I know. I feel mine own no less. As for his strength and skill, I leave to hap. Where many meet, it lies not all in one. What though he vanquished have the Roman troops? That boots him not. Himself is vanquished here. Then weigh your words again. If conquerors ought to seek for peace, the conquered must perforce. But he'll not yield. He'll purchase peace with wars. Well, yield that will. I neither will nor can. Come peace, come wars, choose him. My danger's his safety mine. Our states do not stand alike. If peace be good, as good for him as me. If wars be good, as good for me as him.
What cursed wars, alas, were those wherein both son and sire should so oppose themselves. Him whom you now, unhappy man, pursue, if you should win, yourself would first bewail. Give him his crown, to keep it peril breeds.
The crown I'll keep myself, ensue what will. Death must be once, how soon I least respect. His best provides that can be where in time, not why nor when, but whence and where he falls. What fool, to live a year or twain in rest, would lose the state and honour of a crown?
Consider then your father's grief and want, whom you bereave of kingdom, realm, and crown.
Trust me, a huge and mighty kingdom 'tis, to bear the want of kingdom, realm, and crown.
A common want, which works each worldling's woe, that many have too much, but none enough. It were his praise, could he be so content, which makes you guilty of the greater wrong. Wherefore think on the doubtful state of wars. Where Mars hath sway, he keeps no certain course. Sometimes he lets the weaker to prevail, sometimes the stronger troops hope, fear, and rage with eyeless lot rules all uncertain good. Most certain harms be his assured haps. No luck can last, now here, now there it lights. No state alike, chance blindly snatcheth all, and fortune maketh guilty whom she lists.
Since therefore fear and hope, and hap in wars, be all obscure, till their success be seen, your speech doth rather drive me on to try, and trust them all, mine only refuge now.
And fear you not so strange and uncouth wars?
No, were they wars that grew from out the ground?
Nor yet your sire so huge, yourself so small?
The smallest axe may fell the hugest oak.
Not that in felling him yourself may fall?
He falleth well, that falling fells his foe.
Nor common chance whereto each man is thrall?
Small manhood were to turn my back to chance.
Nor that, if chance afflict, kings brook it not?
I bear no breast so unprepared for harms, even that I hold the kingliest point of all, to brook afflictions well, and by how much, the more his state and tottering empire sags, to fix so much the faster foot on ground, no fear but doth forejudge, and may fall into their fate, whiles they do fear their fate. Where courage quells, the fear exceeds the harm. Yea, worse than war itself is fear of war.
War seemeth sweet to such as have not tried, but wisdom wills we should forecast the worse. The end allows the act, that plot is wise, that knows his means, and least relies on chance. Eschew the course where error lurks, there grows but grief where pain is spent, no hope to speed. Strive not above your strength, for where your force is overmatched with your attempts, it faints and fruitless leaves what bootless it began.
All things are ruled in constant course, no fate. But is foreset, the first day leads the last. No wisdom then, but difference in conceit, which works in many men as many minds. You love the mean, and follow fortune, and follow virtue's race. I like the top, and aim at greater bliss. You rest content, my mind aspires to more. In brief, you fear, I hope, you doubt, I dare. Since then the sagest counsels are but strifes, where equal wits may rest each side alike. Let counsel go, my purpose must proceed. Each likes his course, mine own doth like me best. Wherefore, ere Arthur breathe or gather strength, assault we him, lest he assault us first. He either must destroy or be destroyed. The mischief's in the midst, catch he that can.
But will no reason rule that desperate mind?
A fickle mind that every reason rules. I rest resolved, and to my sire say thus: if here he stay but 3 days to an end, and not forthwith discharge his band and host, 'tis Mordred's oath, assure himself to die. But if he find his courage so to serve, as for to stand to his defense with force, in Cornwall, if he dare, I'll try it out.
O strange contempt! Like as the craggy rock resists the streams and flings the watering waves aloof, so he rejects and scorns my words.
And exit Gawin. We will pause there, even though more things will be happening in a moment. But yeah, really gaining that sort of young, scrappy fighter in Mordred there against the older, more experienced mind as an ongoing sort of theme running here. That Gawin's line of "but will no reason rule that desperate mind?" I mean, that sense of, is Mordred continuing to fight because it's the best course of action, or is it just he can't see any other way? He's just going to keep punching and keep fighting until. Thoughts on the room, Liza?
Okay, so Mordred starts the scene by calling Gawin brother, and in the legendarium, Mordred is the foster brother of Gawain, Gareth, and Gareth Agravain, the Orkney brothers. Whether in some of the sources he's their half brother through Morgan Le Fay. Yeah, unifying thread with Mordred. Doesn't listen to anyone, especially if they're being sensible. Just... No, he wants to do it his way. He's the Frank Sinatra of prehistoric Britain.
I'll go to Eric, then David.
I was going to say, it's interesting, though, how Mordred doesn't try to convince Gawain to join him. Assuming that they're brothers, they would, or even half brothers, they would kind of try to, or unless he means brothers at arms, which is, I don't know, something else. But you would kind of assume that he'd want as many people with him as possible. Although I guess that might be competition.
Well, they're all related. It doesn't mean they're not going to fall out, does it? I mean...
Yes, have you ever met a family before?
Gawain has come as a herald. I don't know if it was bad form to try and persuade the herald to join your side. But
we have got form on that. I can't remember which player it was, but there's basically a herald who gets bribed to work for the other side at one point.
I mean, here Mordred specifically says to Gawin at some point that, you're not giving me the advice I want to hear. You're telling me the opposite. You're making it worse, which is kind of what he might have said earlier to Conan, but didn't. So,
Liza, I stepped on you. Was there more?
No, I think I was pretty much done. But thank you.
Rachael.
I think some of this, I think some part of his not compromising or listening to anybody else comes from that what he wants he can't have unless Arthur is dead, which is his wife, Guinevere. So I think there is part of that relationship between him and the queen that is partially his motivation for starting and continuing some of this.
Just additional information coming from the argument for this second act for scene 3. The argument states, in the third scene, Gawin, brother to Mordred by the mother, comes with an herald from Arthur to imparley of peace, but after some debate thereof, peace is rejected. They are blood relations, and he is coming with a herald. We were discussing this in the chat actually. The script has a herald who says 4 lines, and then Gawin sort of takes it up, and it's sort of difficult to see what the herald does apart from maybe just hold a banner and sort of say ta-da. It's a slightly odd little moment, but it does seem to be a separate character for maybe just an actor who's they're not going to give many lines to in the group. These are all students, mixed ability and skill sets. Maybe there's someone you only trust with 4 lines of dialogue. Eric.
Well, also, like, as we saw in, I think it was Edward II, and pretty much every other historic play about a king, the only way to become king is to either kill the current king, like to ensure that, there's no one in that sort of, that there's a power vacuum, basically. So, the Mordred's argument makes sense in that way. Yeah.
There is a sense, yes, Mordred can't just go back. Now he can't put, he's crossed that Rubicon. There is, the best he can do is just basically run away and go into exile. There will be no peace between them. Any additional thoughts before we complete the act? Okay, no. So we now go to a short but a relatively crowded scene. There might be 2 characters voiced by Eric in a moment, because there's 2 characters. One's called Gilla and one's called Gillamore. Maybe the speech prefixes are wrong, so that might be 2 different characters that I haven't disambiguated. But we'll just read it as it goes and see what seems to make sense, and say that for the moment it's right as it is, and see how it goes by the end of the scene before we get to the chorus. So Gawin's exited, and we have various powers presumably on the side of Mordred here. Mordred, Gilla, Gillamore, Cheldrichus, Dux, Pictorum, and Conan.
Lo, where as they decreed my faithful friends have kept their time, be all your powers repaired.
They be, and with all with ardent minds. To Mars they cry for wars, and longing for the alarm, even now they wish to encounter with their foes.
What could be wished for more? Puissant king, for your great help and valiant Irish force, if I obtain the conquest in these wars, whereas my father claims a tribute due out of your realm, I here renounce it quite. And if assistance need in doubtful times, I will not fail to aid you with the like.
It doth suffice me to discharge my realm, or at the least to wreak me on my foes. I rather like to live your friend and peer than rest in Arthur's homage and disgrace.
Right noble Duke, through whom the Saxons vow their lives with mine, for my defense in wars, if we prevail and may subdue our forces, and may subdue our foes, I will, in lieu of your so high deserts, give you and yours all British lands that lie between the flood of Humber and the Scots, besides as much in Kent as Horsa and Hengistus had when Wargitern was king.
Muted.
For goodness sake, there. Right, sorry. Your gracious proffers I accept with thanks, not for the gain, but for the good desire I have henceforth to be your subject here, may thereby take effect, which I esteem more than the rule I bear in Saxon soil.
Renowned Lord, for your right hardy Picts and chosen warriors to maintain my cause, if our attempts receive a good success, the Alban crown I give to you and yours.
Your Highness' bounty in so high degree were cause enough to move me to my best. But sure, yourself without regard of meed should find both me and mine at your command.
Lord Gilla, if my hope may take success, and that I be thereby undoubted king, the Cornish dukedom I allot to you.
My liege, to further your desired attempts, I joyfully shall spend my dearest blood, the rather that I found the king your sire so heavy lord to me in all my stock.
Since then our rest is on't, and we agreed to war it out. What resteth now but blows? Drives destinies with swords, Mars frames the means. Henceforth what Mordred may, now lies in you. Ere long, if Mars ensue with good success, look, whatsoever it be that Arthur claims, by right or wrong, or conquest's gain with blood, in Britain or abroad, is mine to give, to show, I would have said, I cannot give, what every hand must give unto itself, whereof who lists to purchase any share, now let him seek and win it with his sword. The fates have laid it open in the field. What stars, O heavens, or poles, or powers divine, do grant so great rewards for those that win? Since then our common good, and each man's care, requires our joint assistance in these toils, shall we not hazard our extremest hap, and rather spend our fates than spare our foes? The cause I care for most is chiefly yours. This hand and heart shall make mine own secure. The man shall see me foiled by myself, whate'er he be, that sees my foe unfoiled. Fear not the field, because of Mordred's faults, nor shrink one jot the more of Arthur's right. Full safely fortune guideth many a guilt, and fates have none but wretches whom they wrench. Wherefore make speed to cheer your soldiers' hearts, that to their fires ye yet may add more flames. The side that seeks to win in civil wars must not content itself with wonted heat.
And the men all run off to fight, leaving Mordred and Conan. A muted Conan. Liza.
Lose my own head next. Would God your Highness had been more advised ere too much will had drawn your wits too far. Then had no wars endangered you nor yours, nor Mordred's cause required foreign care.
And exit Conan, leading Mordred alone.
A troubled head. My mind revolts to fear, and bears my body back. I inwards feel my fall. My thoughts misgive me much. Down, terror. I perceive mine end, and desperate though I must, despise despair, and somewhat hopeless hope. The more I doubt, the more I dare, by fear. I find the fact is fittest for my frame. What though I be a ruin to the realm, and for myself therewith, no better end. His mishaps do make a man secure. Such was King Priam's end, who, when he died, closed and wrapped up his kingdom in his death, a solemn pomp, and fit for Mordred's mind, to be a grave and tomb to all his realm.
And exit Mordred. Mordred alone, so much more reasonable a person. It's like he's. That's the interesting thing about that scene is, he's got an audience, a lot of audience, and Conan, once the audience has run off after that stirring speech by Mordred, he tries one last chance, to point out his error, and Mordred. Down terror. And the way that line is laid out, I'm wondering, it seems to be how it is, the I at the end of the line. It's a really interesting way of laying it out. I wonder if that might be an error, but it looks accurate. So there's some really interesting things. We're getting into the head of Mordred, which we haven't, getting inside people's heads. We haven't done quite so much necessarily. Everybody's been laying everything on the surface quite neatly for us. Thoughts from the room. Eric has put something good in the chat. I'll come to him in a minute if nobody else mentions it. Liza, then Rachael.
Yeah, so Mordred, I love Mordred's dialogue in this scene, and beautifully read by Rachael, and Mordred's last speech indicates, despite all these people who've just sworn to aid him, he seems to have a foreknowledge that he will lose this war, but he basically the less hopeful his situation is. I love the more I doubt, the more I dare, which is a really kind of badass way of putting it. That even though he is going to lose, he says he wants to lose memorably. He's concerned with his legacy now, and his reputation, rather than actually winning the war or governing the kingdom, which are the things Conan tends to remind him about.
Yes, and you got the implied physical action to go with it. My mind revolts to fear and bears my body back. So it's like he's run off with everybody else, and then, no, hang on. No, pull yourself. Let's go for it. Go for broke. There's a gambler's heart to this moment, I think. Rachael.
I feel like in the scene before this and this scene, there's a lot more uncertainty towards the end of this act in Mordred, where I feel like in the beginning yesterday he was coming off a lot more confident, but now that he's seen what it actually is, he's starting to quiver a little bit, and that last monologue of his is pretty. I like it a lot. Just that he's like, about Troy, and if I'm going down, I'm gonna bring everybody down with me.
Yes, the Troy references are very heavy in all of this. It's only 1 year out from Troy in terms of the time Arthur's been away, so it's everything matches rather nicely. Katrina.
I think I don't really know this play very well, but I found his comparison with Mordred's comparison of himself with King Priam was really, really interesting, because throughout the whole play so far as I've read, there have been lots of likenesses, not to King Priam with regards to Mordred, but more to Aegisthus, who's part of the same family of kind of mythology, I guess, having usurped Agamemnon while he was away hooking up with his wife, and it just seemed so. That's one really interesting thing, that he identifies himself with King Priam, and the audience I would have thought would maybe associate him more with Aegisthus the usurper. And the other thing is that with this monologue where he suddenly breaks down and drops the politics and drops the bravado, he's saying, I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose here. And that brings to mind questions of human intention versus fate. You've got the involvement of the humanity, the fates, and Gorlois at the beginning, essentially invoking the Eumenides to wreak their havoc on Mordred. And up until this point, Mordred has been a very pragmatic, brain-led man on the surface. And it's only at this point where you start to think, wait a second, he's not in control of anything, is he?
Mm. Yeah, he's just reacting and fighting, and he's backing himself into a corner more and more. And yeah, the Aegisthus thing, we were talking a bit about that, because the situation with Mordred and Guinevere is very Aegisthus and Clytemnestra. It's got a lot of that stuff playing.
Yeah, and Guinevere in this play is much more Clytemnestra-ish than you think of Queen Guinevere being. Sorry.
Eric, I come to you just as you're swigging a liquid. That's the way I like to work.
It's vodka. No, it's water. I was just going to say that it's interesting how, obviously we're talking about, him being a Aegisthus and so on and so forth. But if you think about it realistically, if Arthur gets there and finds that, Mordred has been trying, they've been fighting anyway, but they've been trying to he's been trying to take over. He'd probably kill him anyway. So, in terms of, he's still a risk to the kingdom, even though he says that, we would prefer that, to settle this in peace and stuff. And he's willing to actually fight his own son. But I don't know if that's supposed to be because Mordred instigated it or not.
Eric mentioned in the chat that yesterday we had this whole thing in the Dumb Show about an Irish dagger and an Irish jacket or something along those lines. And actually, now that we have some Irish and other regions of and other countries coming into play, that sort of makes a bit more sense. Which is nice.
Yeah, I think it was Revenge and Fury, the Irishman's Revenge and Fury or something, and he does. I think it's Gilla that says, "Yeah, I hate him because he's so heavy on my family and stuff."
Okay, we have chorus to complete the scene. I rather liked yesterday's chorus. Let's see what the end of Act 2 is. 4 choruses, all in a row.
You princely peers, extolled to seats of state, seek not the fair that will soon turn to foul. Oft is the fall of high and hovering fate, and rare the room which time doth not control. The safest seat is not highest on highest hill, where winds and storms and thunders thump their ill. Far safer it were to fall sound advice than for such pride to pay so dear a price.
The mounting mind that climbs the haughty cliffs and soaring seeks the tip of lofty type, intoxicates the brain with giddy drifts, then rolls and reels and falls at length plumb ripe. Low heaving high is of so small forecast, to totter first and tumble down at last. Yet Pegasus still rears himself on high, and coltishly doth kick the clouds in sky.
Who saw the grief engraved in a crown, or knew the bad and bane, whereto it's bound, would never stick to throw and fling it down, nor once vouchsafe to heave it from the ground. Such is the sweet of this ambitious power, no sooner had than turns oft soons to sour, achieved with envy, exercised with hate, guarded with fear, supported with debate.
O restless race of high aspiring head, O worthless rule both pitied and envied, how many millions to their lost you led, with love and lure of kingdom's bliss untried. So things untasted cause a quenchless thirst, which, were they known, would be refused first. Yea, often we see, yet seeing cannot shun the fact we find as fondly dared as done.
Yeah, there's some really nice lines in there still. Yeah, Pegasus still rears himself on high, and of course we did have in one of the dumb shows someone holding a little Pegasus. In a moment, I'm not quite sure of the bathos-pathos ratio on as an image of someone sort of holding a little horse. Yeah, any additional thoughts on this chorus, this close, and for that matter, the act itself, before we move forward? Eric.
It's interesting how well I put it in the chat as well. But because I looked it up while we were reading. The symbol of cruelty and ambition is supposed to be Pegasus, as opposed to like I don't know, someone like Icarus, who actually flew towards the sun and fell. But I feel like that might be a bit too much of an obvious like. This is what's going to happen. Then again, if they heard the argument of the tragedy back then, they would know what's going to happen. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just a poetic thing.
Well, and also it's not just hearing the argument. Most people would probably have an outline of the nature of Arthur, though this text is doing some interesting things with some of the sort of connections and who's doing precisely what in the narrative. Yeah, it's the misfortunes of Arthur. He might be misfortunate. Any additional thoughts? We don't have to have them if there aren't any in the room. That is fine. Liza.
Despite the play being called The Misfortunes of Arthur, he seems to actually be ahead at this point. That he won the first. There's only been one battle.
Yeah.
Lots of debate, no battle. And Arthur won that one. Mordred was pushed back, not fatally, but there was a skirmish. Arthur won.
Yeah, we've gone from Act 1, Arthur is coming. Act 2, Arthur's come, and he's smashed it. And everyone else is sort of going, ooh, do we go for round 2? Yeah, there's a nice quality to that. I like. We will meet Arthur any second now, by the way. A delayed onset Arthur is approaching any second now. I'm going to ask Katrina if I could ask you to read the third dumb show, please. Take your time, because there's always lots of bits of detail in these dumb shows that we can enjoy.
Brilliant.
So we're going into Act 3. We're going to do the entirety of Act 3 without breaking up any of the wonderful flow. I mean, we will stop and start, but we'll actually get the whole of the act out before we finish this session.
During the music, after the second act, there came upon the stage 2 gentlemen, attired in a peaceable manner, which brought with them a table, a carpet, and a cloth. And then, having covered the table, they furnished it with incense on the one end and banqueting dishes on the other end. Next, there came 2 gentlemen apparelled like soldiers, with 2 naked swords in their hands, the which they laid across the table. Then there came 2 sumptuously attired and warlike, who, spying this preparation, smelled the incense and tasted the banquet. During the which there came a messenger and delivered certain letters to those that fed on the dainties, who, after they had well viewed and perused the letters, furiously flung the banquet under feet, and violently snatching the swords unto them, they hastily went their way. By the 2 first that brought in the banquet was meant the servants of peace. By the second 2 were meant the servants of war. By the 2 last were meant Arthur and Cador. By the messenger and his letters was meant the defiance from Mordred.
Yes, so as ever with the dumb show, we get what the people saw, and then we get an explanation of what it's supposed to mean. I'm not sure how some of those elements are necessarily going to come across, but yeah, some people come on with musical accompaniment and lay out a running banquet, aren't they nice? Yeah, so, lovely. Here's some.
So it's halfway through a very long play, and the audience has to watch someone else eat a banquet.
Yeah, and you do. They come in and there's people eating and smelling incense and stuff. It's. I mean, that's not to say that there isn't some sort of mini break between the acts as well. How long the music went on during the music after the second act. I mean, I don't know precisely how these events would have been structured. So yeah, music always nice. Tables, food, swords, letters. Always nice to watch people reading letters.
We don't know. Do we know where, in what venue this was performed, Rob?
Yes, I should have a note on that somewhere. Any additional thoughts while I look that up? Anyone got any more on this this delightful dumb show? It's much less dynamic than the earlier dumb shows.
Yeah, no furies,
people
no
holding
nymphs.
At Greenwich Palace.
Ah.
So yes, we should be able to infer specific performance size space implications out of that. I assume that's for the Queen and Queen's performance. Whether there's individual student performances separate in a different venue is another matter.
Well, I was thinking if it were performed in a hall. Usually, the hall is where everyone eats, as well as an entertainment venue.
Yeah, so they might be able to just nick some properties from within, just from around the corner. Okay, let's get into some action, shall we? Let's go into, and it's the arrival of Arthur. This scene featuring Arthur, Cador, and Howell.
Is this the welcome that my realm prepares? Be these the thanks I win for all my wars? Thus to forbid me land, to slay my friends, to make their blood disdain my country's shores. My son, belike lest that our force should fate for want of wars, prepared us wars himself. He thought perhaps it might impair our fame if none rebelled whose foil might praise our power. Is this the fruit of Mordred's forward youth and tender age discreet beyond his years? O false and guileful life! O crafty world, how cunningly convey'st thou fraud unseen! The ambitious seemeth meek, the wanton chaste, disguised vice for virtue flaunts itself. Thus, Arthur, thus hath fortune played her part, blind for thy weal, clear-sighted for thy woe. Thy kingdom's gone, thy sphere affords no faith, thy son rebels. Of all thy wonted pomp no jot is left, fortune hides her face. No place is left for prosperous plight, mishaps have room and ways to run and walk at will. Lo, Cador, both our states your daughters trust, my sons respect, our hopes reposed in both.
The time, O puissant prince, permits not now to moan our wrongs or search each several sore. Since Arthur thus hath ransacked all abroad, what marvel is it if Mordred rave at home? When far and near your wars had won the world, what wars were left for him but civil wars? All which requires revenge with sword and fire, and to pursue your foes with present force. In just attempts Mars gives a rightful doom.
Nay, rather, Cador, let them run their race, and leave the heavens revengers of my wrong. Since Britain's prosperous state is thus debased in servile sort to Mordred's cursed pride, let me be thrall, and lead a private life. None can refuse the yoke his country bears. But as for wars, in sooth, my flesh abhors to bid the battle to my proper blood. Great is the love which nature doth enforce, from kin to kin, but most from sire to son.
The noble neck disdains the servile yoke. Where rule hath pleased, subjection seemeth strange. A king ought always to prefer his realm before the love he bears to kin or son. Your realm destroyed is ne'er restored again, but time may send you kin and sons enough.
How hard it is to rule the aspiring mind, and what a kingly point it seems to those whose lordly hands the stately sceptre sways, still to pursue the drift they first decreed. My wonted mind and kingdom lets me know. Think not, but if you drive this hazard on, he desperate will resolve to win or die, whereof who knows which were the greater guilt, the sire to slay the son, or son the sire.
If bloody Mars do so extremely sway that either son or sire must needs be slain, give the law the choice. Let him die that deserves. Each impotent affection notes a want, no worse of vice than lenity in kings, remiss indulgence soon undoes a realm. He teacheth how to sin that winks at sins, and bids offend that suffereth an offence. The only hope of leave increaseth crimes, and he that pardoneth one emboldeneth all to break the laws. Each patience fostereth wrong, but vice severely punished faints at foot, and creeps no further off than where it falls. One sour example will prevent more vice than all the persuasions in the world. Rough rigor looks are right and still prevails. Smooth mildness looks too many ways to thrive. Wherefore, since Mordred's crimes have wronged the laws in so extreme a sort as is too strange, let right and justice rule with rigorous aid, and work his rack at length, although too late, the damning laws, so damned by the laws, he may receive his deep deserved doom. So let it fare with all that dare the like. Let sword, let fire, let torments be their end. Severity upholds both realm and rule.
Ah, too severe, far from a father's mind. Compassion is as fit for kings as wrath. Laws must not lour, rule oft admitteth ruth. So hate, if there were yet, as if there were yet cause to love, take not their lives as foes which may be friends. To spoil my son were to despoil myself. Oft whiles we seek our foes, we seek our foils. Let's rather seek how to allure his mind with good deserts. Deserts may win the worst.
Where Cato first had saved a thief from death, and afterwards himself condemned to die, when else not one would execute the doom, who but the thief did undertake the task? If too much bounty works so bad effects in thankless friends, what for a ruthless foe? Let laws have still their course, the ill-disposed grudge at their lives to whom they owe too much.
But yet, where men with reconciled minds renew their love with recontinued grace, atonement frames them friends of former foes, and makes the moods of swelling wrath to swage. No faster friendship than that grows from grief, where melting minds with mutual ruth relent. How close the severed skin unites again, when salves have smoothly healed the former hurts.
I never saw heart so smoothly healed, but that the scar bewrayed the former wound. Yea, where the salve did soonest close the skin, the sore was oftener covered up than cured, which festering deep and filled within, at last with sudden breach grew greater than at first. For minds which have revenging moods and ne'er forget the cross they forced bear, whereto if reconcilement come, it makes the one secure, while t'other works his will. Atonement seldom defeats, but oft defers revenge. Beware a reconciled foe.
Well, what avails to linger in this life, which fortune but reserves for greater grief? This breath draws on but matter of mishap. Death only frees the guiltless from a noise. Whoso hath felt the force of greedy fates, endured the last decree of grisly death, shall never yield his captive arms to chains, nor drawn in triumph deck the victor's pomp.
What mean these words? Is Arthur forced to fear? Is this the fruit of your continual wars, even from the first remembrance of your youth?
My youth, I grant, and prime of budding years, puffed up with pride and fond desire of praise, foreweening not what perils might ensue, adventured all and wrought to will the reins. But now this age requires a sager course, and will advised by harms to wisdom yields. Those swelling spirits, the self-same cause which first set them on Gog, even fortune's favours quailed, and now mine oft escapes to scare me most. I fear the trap, whereat I oft have tripped. Experience tells me plain that chance is frail, and oft the better past, the worse to come.
Resist these doubts. 'Tis ill to yield to harms. 'Tis safest then to dare when most you fear.
As safe sometimes to fear when most we dare. A causeless courage gives repentance place.
If fortune fawn,
Each way on me she frowns, for when I lose I both procure my grief.
Put case you win, what grief?
Admit I do, what joy.
Then may you rule.
When I may die,
To rule is much.
small if we covet not.
Who covets not a crown?
He that discerns the sword aloft,
That hangeth fast.
but by a hair,
Right holds it up.
wrong pulls it down.
The commons help the king.
They sometimes hurt,
At least the peers.
seld if allegiance want,
Yet sovereignty.
not if subjection fail.
Doubt not, the realm is yours,
'Twas mine till now.
and shall be still.
If Mordred list,
'Twere well your crown were won.
perhaps 'tis better lost.
The
the name of rule should move a princely mind.
Trust me, bad things have often glorious names.
The greatest food that fortune can afford.
A dangerous good that wisdom would eschew.
Yet weigh the hearsay of the old renown, and fame, the wanderer of the former age, which still extols the facts of worthiest wights, preferring no deserts before your deeds. Even she exhorts you to this new attempt, which left untried your winnings be but lost.
Small credit will be given of matters past to fame the flatterer of the former age, were all believed which antique brute imports. Yet wisdom weighs the peril joined to praise. Rare is the fame, mark well, all ages gone, which hath not hurt the house it most enhanced. Besides, fame's but a blast that sounds a while and quickly stints, and then is quite forgot. Look, whatsoe'er our virtues have achieved, the chaos vast and greedy time devours. Today all Europe rings with Arthur's praise. 'Twill be as hushed as if I ne'er had been. What boots it then to venture life or limb for that which needs ere long we leave or lose?
In blind affection so much blare the wise, or love of graceless son so witch the sire, that which concerns the honor of a prince, which with country's good and subjects' just request, should lightly be contemned by a king. When Lucius sent for but his tribute due, you went with 13 kings to root him out. Have Romans for requiring but their own abode your 9 years' brunts? Shall Mordred scape that wronged you thus in honor, queen, and realm? Were this no cause to stir a king to wrath, yet should your conquests late achieved against Rome inflame your mind with thirst full of revenge.
Indeed, continual wars have chafed our minds, and good success hath bred impatient moods. Rome puffs us up and makes us too fierce. There, Britons, there we stand whence Rome did fall. Thou, Lucius, makes me proud, thou heav'st my mind, but what shall I esteem a crown aught else than as a gorgeous crest of easeless helm, or as some brittle mold of glorious pomp or glittering glass which while it shines it breaks? All this a sudden chance may dash, and not perhaps with 13 kings or in 9 years. All may not find so slow and lingering fates. What that my country cries for due remorse and some relief for long sustained toils. By seas and lands I daily wrought her wrack, and spareless spent her life on every foe, even where my soldiers perished whilst I won. Throughout the world my conquest was their spoil. A fair reward for all their deaths, for all their wars abroad, to give them civil wars. What boots it then, reserved from foreign foils to die at home? What end of ruthless rage? At least let age and nature, worn to naught, provide at length their graves with wished groans. Pity their hoary limbs, their feeble fists, their withered limbs, their strengths consumed in camp. Must they still end their lives amongst the blades? Rests there no other fate while Arthur reigns? What deem you me, a fury fed with blood, or some Cyclopean born and bred for brawls, think on the mind that Arthur bears to peace. Can Arthur please you nowhere but in wars? Be witness, heavens, how far 'tis from my mind therewith to spoil or sack my native soil. I cannot yield. It brooks not in my breast to seek her ruin, whom I erst have ruled. What relics now soe'er both civil broils and foreign wars have left, let those remain. They're few enough, and Britons fall too fast.
And we'll just pause there before the Herald enters. I'm getting it's really nice, this sort of hawks and doves debate thing that's going on here. We've got the reverse of the earlier scenes with Mordred. We've got a king who wants peace and is questioning, is this fighty thing really the best way to solve our problems? This is all going to go very badly wrong, and you've got two advisors just going, nah, war's great. Yeah, more war. Let's have some war. And yeah, Arthur's arguments against it is there's really, really nice stuff there. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I've got some other thoughts as well, which I'll hold on to for a bit. But yeah, very similar games, different way round, different cast of characters. Yeah, the argument for peace from the ruler as opposed to the ruled. Thoughts in the room?
Yeah.
Liza, yeah.
Well, yeah, what I like the writing for Arthur. I mean, I liked the writing for Mordred, too. Arthur is a less immediately pyrotechnic part, but despite everything that the playwright has set up about the curse on the House of Pendragon, Arthur seems to have a very heavy sense of what it actually means to be a king rather than just a conqueror, and to be a leader of an army who has a care for the lives of the soldiers that they lead, which again Mordred seems not to. So I guess the danger here is coming off too hand-wringing, because in indecision, he can also waste lives, and in reluctance to strike, he can cause the war to drag out longer. But it's the old sort of Corneille conflict between, if he wins, he kills his son, and if he loses his realm, and abandons his realm to Mordred's misgovernment. So there's really no right answer here, and that's so often the case in war.
And he's a very self-aware ruler as well. He is aware that fortune is fickle. He knows he's had a lot of success, and that could all just turn very, very, very quickly. He's a very self-aware person, and I'm not sure. Well, actually, Mordred is self-aware, but he's more desperate. And again, there's that difference between experience and youth being played out there to a degree. David.
I think that the characters of Howell and Cador are also nicely distinguished, which means that the arguments coming at Arthur are two different arguments. Cador is much more visceral, really. I mean, he has some wonderfully graphic language, and Eric was on a real roll with that. And Cador seems more political and maybe slightly more experienced.
Yeah, you can make emotional arguments, or you can make more reasoned, debatey arguments, and they're both ways of winning the argument. Eric, then Rachael.
I was reminded of the scene we did from Gorboduc, where the workshop thing that we did, where you've got the old king wants to retire and leave his realm to his sons, which of course is a perfectly good idea, isn't it? And it just felt like that scene where, you've got the advisors wanting different things from the king, and the king also not entirely listening to them. Also, it felt a bit like he has maybe PTSD from all the wars he's been fighting. I don't know. I mean, that would make sense if you frame it that way.
I was thinking there are so many even though, they don't, they haven't read the DSM-4 or whatever, they a lot of these playwrights know what post-traumatic stress is. In an age where military service was the norm for men, how could they not?
Yeah. What was I going to say? Just going back to the Gorboduc point, also in Gorboduc you've got characters who talk themselves into war because they think the other side is going to fight them regardless. And there's a little thread of that here as well in both what Mordred is doing and what is happening here. We've got to fight because the other one is going to fight us anyway, you sort of get trapped in this circle of logic. Rachael.
No, I was just gonna talk about the writing again. It's just, this is another beautiful scene, and this writer, just does a great job of not just the verses being beautiful and the arguments being great, but just distinguishing each character from one another, and also distinguishing each relationship between each character is something really individual. Like, how do you say it? It's not like sometimes in the other plays where it's like somebody's just there for the purpose of the argument, like to say it to the main person. Like he really gave a part, I think, to each of these actors who originally were doing this.
Yeah, and the fact that they're working together, we've had more than one person arguing with Mordred in the other, but it was pretty much one at a time. Here we've got two people making combined efforts on probably because Arthur is just actually quite definite as to what he really wants to do. My final thing here is that I weirdly in my mind was Oscar Wilde, because there's almost a competition for the best aphorism going on. I mean, these speeches do keep delivering some really nice zingy one-liners, but then it keeps delivering zingy one-liners, and so there's part of me that's thinking, right, we need a competition now to say, we're in this scene, which are our favourite one-liners, and maybe we trim out a few of the but they're all really good, but it's almost too much, but then it also at times feels like a PowerPoint presentation of bullet point here, bullet point here, bullet point here, for their arguments. So there's that sort of quality that I'm sort of getting at the moment of competing one-liners coming at us. Eric, then Katrina.
I was just gonna say that I really enjoyed the bit where it gets faster, with the quick exchange, because it's like blow, 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 and it's completely a very different change of pace in the middle of the scene. Well, near the end.
And I love that when someone almost said somebody else's line, because one of you had been going at him for a while, and then it's my turn. And it's actually almost like you just turned him round, and then the other one had a go at him at that moment. And some of those, it ends on a full stop, but it should be sort of ... that they're actually midway through a sentence they're trying to make, but then Arthur steps on it and says, no, but this is where this is going. And they're quite difficult. They did really well. I mean, some of them are really tricky to make work. But, once you really get that flow going, they do come alive quite nicely. Katrina.
I was just wondering about Arthur's apparent complete change of character. So that, before the play, obviously, he uses his friend's magic tricks to sleep with his enemy's wife, and he's obviously a bit of a, warmongering pest. And then he comes back, and he is the absolute opposite of his son, who is, Arthur is moral, and he's trying to hold on to family values of the state, values of the burden of ruler, and you think, gosh, this is a really pious, good bloke, very self-aware, very, very, very wise. And I was wondering whether it was the wars that made him like that, which you kind of, you don't know, you think he'd come back a bit of a mess, or whether the self-awareness and the wisdom is part of the curse. So it's actually setting him up for a greater fall, instead of having somebody who's arrogant and completely carefree of what he might be, doing to other people, or somebody pretty amoral wouldn't be as affected by what's about to happen, how unfortunate he's going to get. Whether the self-awareness is a curse in itself.
Oh, I like that. That's really nice. I mean, it's difficult because, as I say, within the play world, we're not necessarily getting as much impression of what Arthur was before, or in terms of the we do get told things, but we don't necessarily experience it. And when we actually meet Arthur, that contrast between our idea of Arthur and then maybe he's come on and he's this withered husk, and that he's a totally different figure to that mythic idea of Arthur as well. Any additional final thoughts before we go into the rest of the text? Oh yes, Eric, then Rachael.
I was just gonna say that in response to that maybe it's because also like they're performing it in front of the queen. They don't want to sort of suggest that being in power is kind of a power trip, although it might be. But they kind of they probably want to show that he is benign in some way.
Rachael.
I was just gonna say that there's so many words in this that sound similar, or just sort of like similar sounding words, and I think the writer employs those when they get towards an argument, because as we've all been reading it, there's some things and some lines that we have to slow down on because he hits such similar sounds. And I think in a way, how he said even the actors performing this changed the lines a bit. I think it's purposely thrown in there for actors so that, when you're having an argument with somebody, sometimes you stutter. And I think it's meant to create this flustered energy when they go at each other sometimes. And I don't know, it just the quick exchanges between Cador, Arthur, and Howell here, that it's like that just clicked together for me, that this is a very like, it's not that he's just being the playwright's not just being decorative with their language for that, but that it's supposed to like confuse an actor and create that energy. It's great.
Okay, we're midway through the act. Remember where we were? We've just had an impassioned speech from Arthur saying, peace! Let's have peace! Give peace a chance, people. At which point we've had the announcement of a herald coming on from Mordred. So all the characters who were on before are still on. Howell, Arthur, and the other one, beginning in Cador. Enter Herald, Act 3, Scene 2.
Could Rachael read Herald?
No, Howell has a line first.
Oh, I'm sorry, but does But
yes,
okay.
right. Katrina is already queued up.
Oh, I
we
beg
did
your
it
pardon.
in chat.
I'm sorry. I missed that. Lo, here an herald sent from Mordred's camp. A froward message, if I read aright. We mote not stir his wrath, perhaps this may. Persuasions cannot move a Briton's mood, and yet none sooner stung with present wrong.
Hail, peerless prince, whilst fortune's wood our king, though now bereft of crown and former rule, vouchsafe me leave my message to impart, no jot enforced, but as your son affords. If here you stay but 3 days to an end, and not forthwith discharge your bands and host, 'tis Mordred's oath, assure yourself to die. But if you find your courage so to serve, as for to stand to your defence with force, in Cornwall, if you dare, he'll try it out.
Is this the choice my son doth send his sire? And must I die, or try it if I dare? To die were ill, thus to be dared is worse. Display my standard forth. Let trump and drum call soldiers near to hear their sovereign's hest.
And we go into the next scene. Lots of people enter. Gawin, King of Albany, Aschillius, King of Denmark, King of Norway, a number of soldiers.
O friends, and fellows of my weariest toils, which have borne out with me so many brunts and desperate storms of wars and brain-sick Mars. Lo now, the 100th month wherein we win, hath all the blood we spent in foreign coasts, the wounds and deaths and winters bode abroad, deserved thus to be disgraced at home. All Britain rings of wars, no town nor field but swarms with armed troops. The mustering trains stop up the streets, no less a tumult's raised than when Hengistus fell, and Horsa, fierce with treacherous truce, did overrun the realm. Each corner threateneth death, both far and near, is Arthur vexed. What, if my force had failed, and standard fallen, and ensigns all been torn, and Roman troops pursued me at the heels, with luckless wars essayed in foreign soils? Now that our fortune heaves us up thus high, and heavens themselves declare, and heavens themselves renew our old renown, must we be dared? Nay, let that princock come that knows not yet himself nor Arthur's force, that ne'er yet waged wars, that's yet to learn to give the charge. Yea, let that princock come with sudden soldiers pampered up in peace, and gowned troops, and wantons worn with ease, with sluggish Saxons' crew, and Irish kerns, and Scottish aid, and false red-shanked Picts, whose slaughters yet must teach their former foil. They shall perceive with sorrow, ere they part, when all their toils be told, that nothing works so great a waste and ruin in this age as do my wars. O Mordred, blessed son, no doubt these market mates so highly hired must be the stay of thy usurped state. Lest my head, inclining now to years, should joy the rest which yet it never reaped. The traitor Gilla, trained in treacherous jars, is chief in arms to reave me of my realm. What corner, for all my wars, shall shroud my bloodless age? What seat for due deserts, what town or field for ancient soldiers' rest? What house, what roof, what walls for wearied limbs? Stretch out again, stretch out your conquering hands. Still must we use the force so often used. To those that will pursue a wrong with wreak, he giveth all that once denies the right. Thou soil, which erst Diana did ordain the certain seat and bower of wandering brute, thou realm which I reverence as my saint, thou stately Britain, the ancient type of Troy, bear with my forced wrongs. I am not he that willing would impeach thy peace with wars. Lo here, both far and wide I conqueror stand, Arthur, each where thine own, thy liege, thy king. Condemn not mine attempts, he, only he is sole in fault that makes me thus thy foe. Here I renounce all leagues and treats of truce. Thou, fortune, henceforth art my guard and guide. Hence peace, on wars run fates, let Mars be judge. I erst did trust to right, but now to rage. Go, tell the boy that Arthur fears no brags. In vain he seeks to brave it with his sire. I come, Mordred, I come but to thy pain. Yea, tell the boy his angry father comes to teach a novice both to die and dare.
And the Herald exits. Arthur takes a big sigh. Right, that's the propaganda bit done, and scene continues with all of the people he knows.
If we without offence, O greatest guide of British name, may pour our just complaints, we most mislike that your too mild a mood have thus held our hands and swords from strokes, for what? Were we behind in any help? Or without cause did you distout our force? Or truth so often tried with good success? Go to, conduct your army to the field, place man to man, oppose us to your foes, as much we need to work as wish your weal.
Seems it so sour to win by civil wars? Were it to gore with pike my father's breast? Were it to rive and cleave my brother's head? Were it to tear piecemeal my dearest child, I would enforce my grudging hands to help. I cannot term that place my native soil, whereto your trumpets send their warlike sounds. If case required to batter down the towers of any town that Arthur would destroy, yea, were it of Britain's self, which most I read, her bulwarks, fortress, rampiers, walls, and fence, these arms should bear the rams to run them down. Wherefore, ye princes, and the rest, my mates, if what I have averred in all your names be likewise such as stands to your content, be all your yeas avow my premise true.
Yay, yay,
Yay!
yay.
So enthusiastic.
Well, technically, we only had one per reader for all the soldiers, so that's all of them there.
She is a mighty force.
Yay,
Yes.
yay, yay.
To be reckoned with.
It does say etc., so the number of yays are dealer's choice.
Optional. Wherein renowned king, myself or mine, my life, my kingdom, and all Denmark power may serve your turn. Account them all your own. And whatsoe'er my force or Norway aid may help in your attempts, I vow it here.
As heretofore I always served your hest. So let this day be judge of Gawin's trust. Either my brother Mordred dies the death by mine assault, or I, at least, by his.
Since thus, my faithful mates, with vows alike and equal love to Arthur's cause you join, in common care to wreak my private wrongs, lift up your ensign's efts, stretch out your strengths, pursue your fates, perform your hopes to Mars. Lo, here the last and utmost work for blades. This is the time that all our valor craves. This time, by due desert, restores again our goods, our lands, our lives, our weal, and all. This time declares by fates whose cause is best. This condemns the vanquished side of guilt. Wherefore, if for my sake you scorn yourselves and spare no sword nor fire in my defense, then, whiles my censure justifies your cause, fight amain, and clear your blades from crime. The judge once changed, no wars are free from guilt. The better cause gives us the greater hope of prosperous wars, wherein, if once I hap to spy the wonted signs that never failed their guide, your threatening looks, your fiery eyes, and bustling bodies pressed to present spoil, the field is won. Even then, methinks, I see the wonted wastes and scattered heads of foes, the Irish carcass kicked, and Picts oppressed, and Saxons slain to swim in streams of blood. I quake with hope. I can assure you all we never had a greater match in hand. March on! Delay no fates, whilst fortune fawns. The greatest praise of war consists in speed.
And exit the various kings and their cohorts.
Since thus, victorious king, your peers, allies, your lords, and all your powers be ready pressed, for good, for bad, for whatsoe'er shall hap, to spend both life and limb at your defense. Cast off all doubts and rest yourself on Mars. A hopeless fear forbids the happy fate.
In sooth, good Cador, so our fortune fares, as needs we must return to wonted force. To wars we must. Such unhappy wars as leave no hope for right or wrong to scape. Myself foresees the fate, it cannot fall without our dearest blood. Much may the mind of pensive sire presage whose son so sins. All truth, all trust, all blood, all bands be broke. The seeds are sown that spring to future spoil. My son, my nephew, yea, each side myself. Nearer than all, woe's me, too near my foe. Well, 'tis my plague for life so lewdly led. The price of guilt is still a heavier guilt, for were it light that even by birth myself was bad, I made my sister bad. Yea, were that also light, I have begot as bad, yea, worse, an heir assigned to all our sins. Such was his birth. What base, what vulgar vice could once be looked for of so noble blood? The deeper guilt descends, the more it roots. The younger imps affect the huger crimes.
And exit, and we'll pause there before we have a quick look at the chorus. So I said, flippantly earlier, that Arthur's doing the propaganda moment. But yeah, there is a sense before the herald of the enemy, before the massed ranks of your allies and their men. Arthur's speech is very different to what he then says in semi-private afterwards and also before. And it's interesting, this is a man being forced into this situation by circumstance.
Yes, but once forced, he knows how to do it. Like, he knows what to say.
Oh yeah, he's been doing this for a decade, or lo now the 100th month.
Yeah.
He's going to all his armies who's just run on. Yeah, it's 101 people.
Yeah, and presumably, like, it seems to me anyway that this is a guy who knows that these men will follow him into hell, and into hell is where he has to lead them. And however conflicted he may feel about that, he has to give them his whole confidence to set it going.
Yes, he cannot during those speeches, show any weakness at all. He can't do that. He can only do that in those private moments that he's given. Whereas his faithful friends are just going, "Oh, there's a messenger from the enemy camp. Maybe we can use this situation to our advantage." Luckily, the message from Mordred is exactly what they needed at that moment in time. Other thoughts, Eric?
I just enjoyed the description of "were it to gore with pike my father's breast" and all that stuff. That was just like, okay, obviously I didn't read it like that, but I mean, because I didn't know what I was going to read. It just kind of, it's like, yeah, I'll do anything just to fight for you, basically.
Other thoughts? That's we've gone. I say the structure of the play so far. Arthur's coming. Mordred's is definitely going to go to war. Arthur doesn't want war. Arthur is declaring war. Other thoughts? Yes, Eric.
Well, also, it seems like sort of that thing of, in Game of Thrones where you've got winter is coming, and then it's like, it's coming, it's finally here! Yeah, it feels like sort of there, but it's actually really well sort of built up compared to other things that we've seen. Like the suspense on both sides. And I guess it still leaves us with wondering what's going to happen with Guinevere, because Guinevere left in the first act. Like she or like second act, I can't remember. So
Act 1. Act 1 was it.
So basically, she disappeared to sort of go live in a cloister. But like, I'm assuming that that can't be the end of it for her, or maybe that's just me.
Oh yes, it can. I mean, no spoilers here, but yeah, we saw some nuns in Act 1, and very peculiar practice it might be, but yes, she's probably not going to return. She might. I might have completely misread my schedule. Maybe I'm wrong there. I've got the Dublin completely messed up today. So. And also just to return to that theme of guilt and the deeper guilt descends. Arthur is a haunted figure here. it's not looking good. It's not looking good. Oh, Eric.
Sorry, I just keep finding new things because there's so many interesting speeches in this. And now that you said Arthur, it's interesting how he's got that bit where in his speech where he goes, the traitor Gilla, blah, blah, blah. And then before that, he just, like in the middle of talking about all these wars, he kind of goes, oh, Mordred, blessed son. And then he snaps back to that moment of sort of, no doubt, you're kind of trying to take control. We understand this, but you have no experience. I will kill you and destroy you utterly. It feels very sort of, I don't know, like that shift from he's my son to he's my enemy.
Okay, let's. Katrina, was that?
It's a kind of half-formed thought about the guilt and the sort of schizophrenic approach he has to his son, and I still really don't know about the attitudes towards incest, but clearly delighting his sister wasn't. I just thought it was something they did, way back when. But reading that, it's clear to see that there is some kind of, very unholy guilt around it, and he's, struggling to come to terms with having created something out of something so unnatural, but also loving his son. It's a bit complex.
Yeah,
I didn't express that very well.
Yeah, and when he was younger, he also did some country dancing.
But he never talked about that.
No, nobody mentions that. Okay, let's find out what the chorus thinks of it all. Choruses, slightly longer chorus speeches from the chorus this time. Let's see what first, second, third, and fourth chorus think.
When many men assent to civil wars and yield the suffrage to enforce the fates, no man bethinks him of his own mishap, but turns that back unto another's share. Whereas if fear did first forewarn each foil, such love to fight would breed no Britain's bane. And better were still to preserve our peace than thus to vent for peace through waging wars. What folly to forego such certain haps, and in their stead to feed uncertain hopes. Such hopes as oft have puffed up many a realm, till cross success hath pressed it down as deep. Whilst blind affection fetched from private cause, misguiding wit hath masked in wisdom's veil, pretending what in purpose it abhorred.
Peace hath three foes encamped in our breasts, ambition, wrath, and envy, which subdued we should not fail to find eternal peace. 'Tis in our power to joy it all at will, and few there be, but if they will they may. But yet even those who like the name of peace through fond desire repine at peace itself. Between the hope whereof and it itself 1,000 things may fall that further wars. The very speech sometimes entreats of truth is slashed and cut asunder with the sword. Nor seld the name of peace doth edge our minds and sharpeneth on our fury till we fight, so that the mention made of love and rest is oft a whetstone to our hate and rage.
Lo, hear the end that kingly pomp imparts, the quiet rest that princely palace plights, care upon care, and every day anew. Fresh rising tempest tires that tossed mind, who strives to stand in pomp of princely port, on giddy top and calm of slippery court, finds oft a heavy fate, whiles too much known to all, he falls unknown unto himself. Let whoso else that list affect the name, but let me seem a potentate to none. My slender bark shall creep anest the shore, and shun the winds that sweep the weltering waves. Proud fortune overslips the safest roads, and seeks amidst the surging seas those keels, whose lofty tops and tacklings touch the clouds.
O base yet happy boors! O gift of God scant yet perceived, when powered ermine robes, with secret sighs, mistrusting their extremes, in baleful breast forecast their filtering fates, and stir and strive and storm, and all in vain. Behold, the peasant poor with tattered coat, whose eyes a meaner fortune feeds with sleep, how safe and sound the careless snudge doth snore. Low roofed lurks the house of slender hap, costless, not gay without, scant clean within, yet safe, and oftener shrouds the hoary hairs, that haughty turrets reared with curious art, to harbour heads that wield the golden crest. With endless cark in glorious courts and towns, the troubled hopes and trembling fears do dwell.
And thus ends Act 3. Next time we'll be going into the cheerful happiness that is Act 4 and Act 5. Thoughts about the chorus? Are we enjoying the chorus? What are they doing this time that's different from last time? Some interesting word choices that I'm now paranoid about, just as typos. I'm going to go back and check some of those because they're either wonderful or wrong. Any thoughts on chorus or Act 3 overall? Liza. Muted.
Well, I like this chorus section. I like the thoughts on peace and war and why we keep having war when we could have peace. Because that's the big question, isn't it? We're capable of love. We're capable of understanding. We're capable of peace. Why do we keep having wars instead? So I think this does kind of a good job of breaking that down in a poetic way.
Mm. Yeah, this is the choruses generally have been, nicely elucidating or playing with thoughts that I'm really liking. I say I'm often not a fan of choruses. I'm on the whole a fan of this chorus. This chorus can come again. I will serve tea and biscuits. Rachael.
No, I was just gonna say to Liza's point about the peace. Like, he's been fighting wars for 9 or 10 years, and he's coming back to fight another war. It's like it's really the only thing that he knows how to do at this point. Even though he's, it seems like he's gotten into a cycle in a forever war. Yeah, I like these choruses. Every part has amazing lines, and yeah.
Yeah, the overall structure of this play that I'm a big fan of, and we've had in other plays as well, is that sort of snapshot quality. We're zooming in on a moment. Each act is basically one scene ongoing. They're not unimportant moments as well. It's not like we're zooming in on a scene that always follows on from other exciting business. These plays are not in a position necessarily to produce massive battles and things like that, so we may miss those moments, but they still manage to zoom in on really nice bits of drama. I do like what that's doing. We approach extra time, so final thoughts about Act 2, the end of, and Act 3, or the play overall as it goes. David, I think I'll go to you first. You came back for a second session. You didn't have to. He wasn't down on the schedule to return, and yet we lured him back with the promise of the arrival of King Arthur. You're muted at the present, so...
I'm very pleased I came. I think there's some, it's gripping, and there's some magnificent language, and I have to say, Liza has surpassed herself this evening. Great Arthur. So thank you for that. Really enjoying it.
Excellent. Rachael, go to you. You were down for but you did give up you gave up one of your parts today as a moment of generosity. Are you regretting that generosity now? Those wonderful words you didn't get to say.
No, no. That David did a great job. No, and also it's fun. It's fun to just have more people jump in on these readings and play off of each other. No, but I agree that this is a really great play to just hop into, and anybody who gets to perform this on stage has so much to work with that it's one of those crazy joys, I think, that they'll be gifted with.
Katrina, you've come in mid flow, so you only have the evidence of what you've experienced here. What do you think of the show so far?
I'm really enjoying it. The characterization is what's really doing it for me. I like how every single character, you can pretty much tell their age and what side of the bed they got up out of. It's all so individual. I really enjoy it. Even the poor Herald, who had to listen to Arthur's rant and then go back and try to repeat it word for word to Mordred. I was kind of feeling sorry for them.
Yeah. What do you do when presented? I'm hoping there's a press release that you just get handed on the way out. And
then he waved his sword, and then he said something about breasts. No. Wrong. I'm going to mute myself. I'm sorry, everybody.
No, that's very, very much exactly the content that we're here for. Eric, final thoughts.
I don't know. I loved it, and having Liza as Mordred and Arthur. Mordred yesterday and Arthur today, was quite fun, and obviously, Rachael being Mordred today was quite amazing also. But it's. I was trying to think, okay, so what have we had thus far? And basically, it's been a family rift that has been growing for the past 3 acts, because it started off with the family thing of Guinevere having an affair with Mordred, and then it becomes this thing of we're gonna wage war, which is and it's not just about, obviously the politics there are not just about the betrayal of man and wife, but also the betrayal of the crown and politics and all that stuff. It's just interesting to think about in that way, because it's obviously all the layers.
Liza, final thoughts?
Well, I have to say, as this play goes on, I'm really liking the verse writing more and more. This is some really nice blank verse, and the meter really helps it flow, which is good, because some of these speeches, they are long. The actor gets handed a part, and the scroll unrolls, and it hits the floor, and it goes poof,
rolls along the floor, out the door, and a puppy grabs it, and it all goes horribly wrong.
So I mean, it still has the feeling of a debate play. As Elvis says, a little less conversation and a little more action. But then it's also, I think it seems, and Eric and Katrina can both pull me up on this, but it seems very inspired by the tropes of Greek tragedy, where the action happens off stage and is related on stage, rather than your alarums and excursions and drums and type of play. I'm very scholarly, you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going off. These are all fanboys for Seneca, and that's where
Fanboys for Seneca is the name of my new band.
Yeah. But there's also a structural reason. I don't think the playing space that they've got is actually that extensive in space terms. So one of the reasons why battles may be happening off stage may be just simply that you just can't really do anything. You can't really move necessarily. So I think there is an element of content following, form, or form following, the context of which they are performing. Obviously, the context changes slightly depending on whether they're performing for fellow students or, in this case, whether they're performing before the Queen. But they don't have the physical advantages of having a massive or reasonably massive stage and backstage facilities and options. And, they manage dumb shows, they manage things, but there is a noticeable limit to the number of bodies that are on stage at any one time. So I think there's that element. I mean, I have to say, talking about the length, we've been very good today. We haven't talked about how long things are. There is that element of going, right, well, for a modern performance, if I were working with it, tweaks to the dumb shows, using the lead in of the dumb show to say, right, what other things can be happening visually in this play that are not necessarily prescribed by the text, and also just starting to look for, we can make some trims here. We can look for what those might be. And when I was talking about that sort of competition of aphorisms, we've got so many great one-liners, but we've got so many great one-liners, and it's actually, it is that thing of trying to decide, well, some of those may have to go, just to make this just a little more fleet of foot. Because structurally, I really love what this play is doing, and even looking ahead vaguely at what the argument for the rest of the play is, it has a really nice shape, and lots of potential. I always like potential. I don't care what the original author actually wanted to do. I just want to look at the potential of what can be done with this text. Eric?
I was going to say that it's interesting how you mentioned, the structural reasons of this stuff, because, otherwise, if you look at it, it's mostly, three-person scenes, aside from Act 3, Scene 3, I think, or, the one where you've got the King of Norway, the King of Denmark, and so on and so forth, when they're all going to go march off to war. So it's kind of, very tidy and as Liza and Katrina will tell you, it's kind of like ancient tragedy only had 3 actors at the beginning. I mean, they had 2 and then they added the 3rd, and that was considered revolutionary at the time.
Yeah, whoa, man.
Yeah, I know.
What would Thespis say about that? I mean, whoo.
So yeah, I mean, maybe it's just also playing on that too.
Yeah, and when you do have more, that sort of ensembled mass, you do get the impression that they've all sort of just marched on in a line and they're standing at the back, and they don't necessarily. I mean, I could be completely wrong on this point. I do not know, but it just seems to be that seems to be a consistent issue.
Maybe they even had just one soldier.
I'm sure they can rustle up some noises off.
One soldier with cardboard cutouts.
Yes. We've actually got that thought for some of our future readings for when we need an army on stage. Is one person's video that would just be a picture of an army, just going. Rachael.
I think I know, if you were gonna put this on, you would be making some cuts. I think this play is so. I think this is a play that people wouldn't mind if it was a little longer than usual. So even though you're gonna make cuts, I think that this, I don't know, there's just something about this one where it's so easy to get into and so in your face. I think that if it was how they say no movie or something should be over 2 hours or something. If this was a 2 hour and 30-minute movie, I think people wouldn't mind the extra 30 minutes.
Well, it's interesting actually. In theory, it's it could be. It depends how you play it. It only just crosses my 2 hour Rubicon. It depends on the dumb shows. They are an indeterminate factor for how long they might be. If you're doing the dumb shows as writ. Some of them I'm less a fan, less or more a fan of. I don't think I'm not looking at this going hack. I'm looking at this just going trim. Find the best material and focus on that. Katrina, then Eric.
Yeah, with regards to what Rachael said about not cutting it down too much and people not minding. I think because the scenes are really quite formulaic, aren't they? They go kind of introduction, big speech, a few smaller speeches that they, interact back and forth with, a few one-liners to sum up, and then there's a summary. It's actually quite a well-balanced outline of each scene, and then that structure, I think, comes back a couple of times. It's just such a well-balanced play in that respect that you always kind of know where you are, and it's very, very easy to follow because the big speeches, the long speeches are so well written. Everything is obviously, but likewise you have the little summaries at the end for the people who don't quite follow all the big words, and kind of need a bit of a sum up.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you could take it the other way and go absolutely large and say, well, look, we've got these acts. You could have an interval between each act. We can have food. We can have, this could be actually a 4-hour thing, but it comes with a lot of food and wine and stuff, and that it actually becomes much more expansive, and in a sense doesn't feel as long because all you're ever getting are these little 20-minute nuggets, or at any one time. And then there's beautiful music and things. So in that sense, you could expand it. And actually, it's weird sometimes if you do a very, very long event, but with lots and lots of breaks, it really doesn't feel like it's this chore, never-ending chore. Sometimes I've seen a few shows that have done that, and that can be very effective. But that's where you buy into the event, and you've got someone in full dress as Queen Elizabeth, and you're in the original palace, and you just go all out, and the ticket price is ridiculous. Sorry, talk for longer than I intended, Eric.
I was just going to say that I think it was yesterday where I mentioned, you've got the different staging stuff. Well, it would be interesting to see how you would stage this, because obviously Guinevere disappears at the beginning, as we said, and then she never comes back. So maybe she could double as Queen Elizabeth or something, or even just I don't know, just because she's obviously the excuse, isn't she? She's just not. She's like the Helen in this sort of Trojan War type context thing. I don't know. It's just because I was thinking you would have them separately, but then obviously just is very physical business, very sort of in your face kind of thing with the Mordred and Arthur scenes.
Well, yeah, it might be, and that's an element of the dumb show of saying well, we it may infer or create our own, and extending the journey and the narrative of what these characters are doing beyond the one scene or act that they're in. Also thinking in other mediums as well, that this would work very well as a episodic thing that you consume as in episodes. That each episode is its own self-contained unit. It would work very well as a televisual or oral drama, aural rather. Yeah, that might work. Play in its favour is its structure there. But yes, there's always a thing with plays that do these snapshots of you go, I wish there's more on X. I'd like to know what happened to Y. Where are they? But we're only looking at this moment. Any other additional, gone around the room, anything else come out of that little discussionette? No, I've beaten everyone down with my words once again. And with that note of my never-stopping tongue, I will thank all the wonderful readers for all their comments and thoughts and their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.